New York. Jennifer, where are you from? Remind me.
I am located in Dearborn, Michigan, which is right outside of Detroit.
So are you on Central Time or are you still on Eastern Time?
I'm still on Eastern Time.
Okay. Well,
Yep.
Middle of the day, it's a little too late for most people to have coffee, so I am drinking seltzer. I'm drinking my lemon seltzer. For those of you who are joining us on LinkedIn, on Facebook, or on YouTube, welcome. Let us know where you're calling in from. A couple weeks ago, we had some folks from India. We had some folks from Australia at the same time, which was pretty cool. So somebody must have been up really, really late.
Yeah.
And Jennifer's from Michigan, and I am from New York. And we're here. So this is Coffee with Entrepreneurs Live. And the first question I ask everybody, and I'm going to ask it of the audience first, is how do you take your coffee? So type it into the chat. We are here. We do see your responses. So let us know how you take your coffee. Let us know how the weather is outside for you today. And Dr. Jennifer Nash, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Marie. I'm excited to be here today.
Yeah, it's always great to talk to you. So how do you take your coffee? And if you don't drink coffee, how do you start your day?
So I don't actually drink coffee, but what I do drink in my brand new Michigan mug is a recovery blend called Resync, which is a blend of some fruits and beet juice and other red vegetables and green vegetables that helps me recover from the training regimen I just started. So that's what's in my coffee cup these days.
So what training regimen are you on?
Yeah. I am getting back into ballroom dancing, so very excited about that. And the studios are starting to open up a little bit here, and the gyms are starting to open back up. So I had a torn muscle that I've been recovering from over the past couple months, and so just really excited to get back into that and get dancing again.
That's so awesome. I forgot that. Oh, wow. That's really great. I got really into baby ballroom.
Yeah, I love that show. I love that show. And there's so much truth to it.
Yeah. And I started following, Mia and Andre, and they're a couple now, and they're probably 18 now, so
yeah.
And they just continued to crush it. So,
my favorite couple on there it was Jack, and I believe her name was Ella. I don't know if I'm remembering her name right, but they're going to be world champions. They are amazing. Watching them and their lines and their footwork and their technique and their passion, and they've even got the faces down, and they're like 8. It's amazing. So I watch it as much as I can.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what you're up to these days, and how you're spending your pandemic.
Yeah, so the pandemic, it's interesting. I spent some time in Bali in January this year, and came back from there through Korea and New York City to get some wedding dress fitting done. And then March hit, and the pandemic really hit, and so postponed the wedding actually, and then just entered into this very strange phase of no traveling. And then for me, coming from a consulting background and starting my own business and basically being on the road 100% of the time, to switch that mindset and all of a sudden be at home, not going anywhere, was really, really hard. So that took some time to adjust to. And then I realized as business started to decline a little bit because people were just in an insecure space and companies weren't spending, I'm like, wow, this is a great time to develop some stuff. And so I created a lot of content. I worked on some of my back end processes. As an entrepreneur, I got a lot more clear around, how I want to show up in the market. I completed a rebranding. I launched my new website. I started my book. I'm in the process of finishing that now. And I'm also looking to launch a podcast early next year. So I've had a lot going on. And COVID, don't waste a good pandemic. I don't know who said that, but I think, there's a lot of truth to that. I think I'm able to really move my business forward in different ways during the pandemic.
That's awesome. Yeah. And it sounds like you really took the opportunity that presented itself, right? And first of all, I'm so sorry that your wedding got postponed.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's been really tough, we never envisioned that. And, my fiance's mother died of sort of COVID related things in May. And so it's really sad because, if we'd been able to have the wedding in March, she would have at least been able to FaceTime in. And obviously now that's not possible. So we're just hoping that everyone stays hale and hearty and healthy and will be available for our rescheduled date next year.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah.
It's such a crazy time. And I mean, I remember in February, I went to Atlanta. And now that feels like years ago. Like I talk about that time and I'm like, oh, that was just this year, but people, you're right. People have been home. So it's kind of a crazy time. So in terms of, the opportunities that you took when business started to decline, tell us a little bit about the book that you're working on.
Yeah, so I am working, can you still hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. I am working on a book that basically is intended to help leaders get better at being leaders. As I looked at my career over the course of 25 years, I noticed that there were, maybe a handful of leaders that I really wanted to role model and emulate. And I thought that had, behaviors that were, they moved people forward and inspired them. And as I looked at the entire set of leaders that I had, it was really only a couple. The vast majority weren't where they could have been or maybe should have been in terms of their leadership capabilities. So I started to do some research in that space during my doctorate, and I finished up some of the field interviews last year around, leadership and relationships and what does it mean to be, a human leader, essentially. And so my name for the book is Leading with Heart, the Human Side of Business. And I'm really excited about this book. I have all these amazing stories from people that share how they've been able to be human leaders and put people first and lead with heart and find that vulnerability and courage to do the right thing and make the tough decisions and have the hard conversations and role model the behaviors that sometimes, as we've seen in our political climate lately, is sometimes hard for people to do. And so I'm so excited to be able to bring this book, to the world and just share this framework for people that want to be better leaders to get better at the human element of business.
And what a perfect time for all this, right? I mean, we've seen the best and the worst during the pandemic, right? Like I've heard stories of, mass layoffs on Zoom, and stories of, companies that give their now remote employees $150 to build their home office to spend any way they want, right? So it really is kind of, so I love Leading with Heart because it's something that we all need right now, right? From everywhere, from the companies that you're coaching to the country, right?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because, as we move through our careers, we're always focused on the tasks. We're always focused on the projects and delivering the results in the timely manner. And I think when you make that transition from, managing tasks to leading people, it doesn't really come with a manual. There isn't anybody that takes you aside and says, okay, now your job as a leader is really to lead people. You're there to inspire them. You're there to motivate them. How can you get the best out of your people? And leaders simply don't have those tools. We don't teach that. So being able to have a reference and a resource, based on lived experiences of other leaders who are doing it well is going to be really, really helpful, I think, for leaders as they not only move into their first people leadership role, but as they move up the ladder in the organization. They have so many different things that are, demanding their time that sometimes I think it's really, really difficult to remember to focus on the people. These are human beings that are getting this work done for you. They have dreams and hopes and desires and families, and they're a whole person that they're bringing into that workspace, not just this professional self. And so when leaders can really activate that personal part and integrate that whole person into how they are inspiring and motivate that person to move forward, they will move mountains for you. And I've seen it happen. I've experienced it myself, and it's one of the stories that I share in the book.
That's awesome. So what do you see that people are doing right these days?
What do I think people are doing right these days? Great question. I think that the Business Roundtable that was signed by like over 180 companies about a year and a half ago or so now, that sort of started the movement towards putting people over profits and people over projects. But it didn't really take shape until I think COVID hit, and organizations went, oh my gosh, like now it's not just a trust issue of allowing our people to work from home, or maybe the trust wasn't there before. Now it's truly a safety and health and well-being factor. Like, we need to make sure our employees are safe. They can't come into the office right now. And so organizations have, many, I won't say all, but many organizations have recognized that and started to put those pieces in place where they've enabled their employees to work from home. And they've put technical measures in place and infrastructure in place to allow that working from home to continue, sometimes indefinitely, depending on the organization.
Yeah.
So I think from a right standpoint, and what's best for the employee and helping them to work in the way that works best for them, taking those steps to really put the infrastructure in place and put the pieces in place and enable that remote work is a great first step. I know there are some organizations out there that still are requiring people to come into work, whether it's because of, you know, the job that they have, or, you know, maybe they're a first line responder. But I also have heard, you know, people have shared with me anecdotes of organizations where there's no reason why the work can't be done from home, but the managers and leaders are requiring them to come into the office. And that, I think there is room for improvement there and shifting that mindset. So
what work does a manager like that need to do then? If, you know, if there's work that, let's say, can be done remotely, but the manager, for whatever reason, I would imagine, you know, for control, right, and for micromanagement, and, you know, because they feel safer that way, right, is forcing their employee to come in. What kind of work does that would you suggest that manager do?
That's a great question. So oftentimes, what I had seen over the course of my career, when managers, some leaders, but mostly managers, weren't comfortable with someone working from home, it was because there was a trust issue. Sometimes it was an infrastructure issue. You know, they didn't have the technical pieces available or in place to let someone work from home. That was back in the early 90s and 2000s. Like, that isn't so much of an issue today. I think it's more around that manager or leader simply asking themselves, like, what is getting in my way of allowing my people to work at their best, and what's getting in my way of putting their well-being first. And I think some managers and leaders need to really turn that mirror around and ask themselves, what is it? You know, if it's not an infrastructure issue, and it's not a legal issue, or it's not, you know, someone maybe is working on government work and they can't work on a personal laptop because they have to have that government laptop and it can only be in the building, you know, those kinds of exceptions. I think it comes down to really, you know, asking themselves those hard questions. You know, is it because they, as a manager or leader, didn't have that opportunity when they were growing up in corporate, and so they felt like, well, if I didn't get to do it, then, you know, other people shouldn't get to do that either, right? Because that may be an issue.
Yeah.
I often find that it's you know, it's something internal with the manager or leader that they really need to look at and ask themselves those tough questions. And that's where digging deep and having that vulnerability and courage to say, wow, this is something that maybe is a limiting belief for me. And maybe this is something that if I were to be able to take this belief and replace it with something that is more empowering for myself, then I can also help my team move forward in a way that works best for them.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, you know, I think the truth is, right, that no matter what we do, whether we do it right or we do it wrong or we do it in between, right, people are going to remember what we did during this time.
Absolutely. And, you know, that's such a key issue right now, because organizations, every time another organization goes fully remote with its workforce, that is another opportunity for your top talent to leave. So talent is so mobile right now. You know, it's really a global talent pool. And so employees that want to work from anywhere and want to work remote, they have so many more options now to pick from than they did before. And so it's really becoming a question of, how are you going to make sure that you keep your top talent, right? If you really want them to stay, what are you doing to create those conditions for them to want to stay. And part of that can be, using remote work, right? Part of that can be providing them an executive coach. Part of that can be giving them the flexibility and autonomy to structure their day in a way that works best for them, and they get the work done and it gets delivered. So there's a lot of different factors that go into that.
I love that you said that. I've never heard anybody say it like this, right? That every time another company goes remote, it's an opportunity for your top talent to leave.
Mm-hmm.
That to me, the light bulb goes off. It's like, oh, of course, and as a leader, I mean, that's so important to pay attention to, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, so with COVID, obviously many industries have contracted, right? But there's other industries that are expanding.
Mm-hmm.
And there are more opportunities for new roles and new responsibilities and new types of work coming down the pipe because of, artificial intelligence and Industry 4.0 and the digital transformation and what this all means with the Internet of Things and how this is all moving forward at such a more advanced rate because of COVID, right? I think COVID has really accelerated the needle on a lot of this.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So for organizations, especially, those that are involved in those people in the organization who are involved in talent decisions, right? Whether it's the CLO or the CHRO or the CPO or the CEO, whoever it is that is looking at that, it really needs to be forefront and top of mind. How am I integrating my talent strategy with my business strategy? Mm-hmm. What am I doing to put those pieces in place to make sure that I have the talent I need to go forward? And if I don't have them now, what am I doing to find them? How am I going to find them? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of questions I think that should be and could be on the minds of those, hiring individuals currently, or those conversely who are looking for work and looking to find that next great opportunity. And that actually brings up a really cool point, I think, because I think what also COVID has done, there's been a lot of negative things about COVID, obviously, but I think also there's some positive things about COVID. And I think one of those things is that it has given people the time and space to really be intentional and purposeful about how they want to make their mark in the world. Mm-hmm. What kind of difference do they want to make? What impact do they want their work to have? And it's given them the space to really think about that, where maybe before, you're slogging it away, right? You're going in, you're punching the clock, you're doing what you need to do. But that question around the purpose and the impact and the meaning and the values wasn't there simply because people just didn't really have time to think about it.
Yeah.
And COVID has slowed things down in that way and really created that space for reflection and created a space for opportunity for people to think about, what is it that I really want to do with my life? Mm-hmm. Am I in that place now? And if I'm not, how do I want to get there? And what do I need to do? So that is something that is, and in my work with career coaching right now, that is something that I am talking about with all of my clients. It's almost exclusively the main topic of focus for what they want to cover in career coaching sessions. And I will say at my executive coaching level, they are also talking about that, because now they're thinking about, I'm doing this work, but the magic isn't there anymore. Or, I used to be so passionate about what I did, and like somewhere along the line that just got lost. I want to get that and find that again. So that is a really big space and opportunity, I think, for organizations to capitalize on right now if they're seeking to bring in top talent.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing because I've seen people really flourish during this time, right?
Yeah.
Like you're doing, you write a book, you're launching a podcast, you're doing all these things, right? And then people have had really difficult times during this time, right? Whether it's because of work or because of their boss or just being home. So I love that you're highlighting the opportunities that we have around remote work now, especially as leaders, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, I think too, one of the things that COVID is causing, in the talent space specifically, is really this thinking around, well, maybe I should go out and do my own thing, like maybe I should become an entrepreneur. Maybe now is the right time. Right. And I think that's more prevalent now than it was before.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a lot of people who ask me that question, how do I know if it's right? Like, should I go be an entrepreneur? Like, what should I do? Like, how do I even start that process? Like, I'm afraid to leave my job because of the stability of a paycheck. How do I make that leap into being an entrepreneur? And you as an entrepreneur, you also know that very well, right? That's a tough conversation and decision to make.
Yeah, it is. Oh, it absolutely is. I mean, and I started my business during the bear market, right? Like I don't know about you. I started in 2016, and we were in the middle of the longest growth period in the history of the economy, I think. So I wouldn't even know how to, people ask me all the time, and I still don't know how to answer that. I'm like, I got lucky, but
Yeah.
So what do you say to somebody then who's thinking about that right now? Because a lot of people are.
Yes. And oftentimes what I hear is, well, I'm just going to start my own business because I can't find a job.
Yeah.
And I would strongly urge caution with that kind of response. It's a red flag for me, in my career coaching work. Those are not the conditions that you want to start your own business under. I think I don't have children, but from what I've heard from people who do have children is that, your business is like your baby. It takes up a lot of time, it takes up a lot of energy, it takes a lot of money, and it constantly needs nurturing, care, and feeding. So from that perspective, what are you willing to put into this?
Yeah.
And what is it that you want to get out of it? And why are you going to do this? What's your why? Do some thinking around, why do you want to be an entrepreneur? Is it because it's the only way you can make the impact that you want to have? Is it because you can't find a job that gives you that unique combination of, values and purpose and motivators and skills for you to use and bring to bear to make the world a better place? Is it because, you just simply can't find anything else and you just figure I'll start a business? So I think getting really clear about your why is a good place to start when you're trying to think about that decision. I think the second thing is if you've decided to start a business, then you have to be thinking about, how am I going to fund this? What am I going to live on? What's my financial situation look like? And do I have enough money saved that I can, get through a year or 2 years and maybe even 3 years without the type of income that I'm looking for, before the business is successful, right? So there's a lot, as you know, there's a lot of decisions that go into that. I try to help them, surface some of those things so that they can be making a decision with data points as opposed to gut feel.
Sure. Absolutely. I love that. And for anybody who is thinking about starting a business, I think that's really sound advice. The people who are starting businesses right now, whether it's out of necessity or out of, well, this is finally my chance, right? It's an interesting time.
Yeah, it definitely is, and I would say that if you've determined it's the right path for you and you're ready to go down that path, like, again, I think one of the benefits of COVID is that it's made that environment so rich for people in terms of the gig economy, right? So now we have people that can do freelance writing from anywhere, right? We have people that can, they've maybe shifted their current business into a different business to meet the demands of what COVID has brought, right? So like, for example, there's an entrepreneur in my local community who ran a limousine service, right? A black car service for executives. Well, there wasn't a lot of travel going on during COVID, so if any. So she shifted her business and she started taking care of, elderly people, right? She would pick up their groceries and take them to them, or she would take them to doctor appointments, or she found a way to shift the focus of what she was doing to still be able to serve and have an impact. And then when business picks back up from a travel perspective, then obviously she'll probably combine that too. But now she has this great extra revenue stream that she didn't have to begin with.
Yeah.
So I think having these opportunities to create and adapt and evolve and shift, and I think as you know, and I've seen it also in my experience during COVID, this has been a very interesting time to create new revenue streams and think differently about our businesses and try to figure out, like, what is it that's going to bring value to others currently, and then help us also, because it gives us a different way to survive and grow while we're waiting for, the effects of COVID to die down and to, for the economy to start back up.
Yeah. And it's funny, just when everything first started and people didn't know what was going to happen, right? We didn't know how long we were going to be doing this. You know, we didn't know. At first it was 2 weeks, then it was a month, then it was 2 months, then it was 3 months. And now we're just like, okay, well, they'll let us know when.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now we're home forever until a vaccine, probably, right? You know, so
yeah.
I had a conversation with somebody who was interested in my services, and she was a coach, and we were having that conversation about like, and then she was like, yeah, well, I only coach people in person, and I'm not changing that. So, and I was like, well, then what? Okay, so I don't know what she ended up doing, but in my mind, I was like, you're in trouble. You're not adapting. You're not, you know, so you can either dig in your heels, right?
Right. Right.
Or
I refuse to accept this change. Yeah.
Like the pandemic is not going anywhere, right? We've got to, you know, we've got to figure things out. You know, and I think it's not going anywhere anytime soon, right?
Yeah. 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 You know, it's so interesting how people react and respond to change, right? Yeah. Some people are like, oh, no problem, I got this. Like, I'll just adapt and evolve and just shift, and it's an opportunity to explore stuff and discover and, you know, learn things I don't know and try things that I've never tried before. Yeah. And other people are in that space of, I'm not able to shift or adapt or evolve or grow, perhaps because there's something getting in the way of me doing that, right? And I know for a lot of people that COVID has caused just, you know, huge anxiety, right? Huge anxiety. It's off the charts right now in terms of where people's mental health are in this country and probably around the world. So helping people figure out, like, how do they manage, you know, all of these emotions that can be very overwhelming on top of, you know, the sky is falling and, you know, there's all these deaths around the world and the economy is crashing and we have all this social unrest and racial injustice and all these different things that are hitting us all at once. Like, no wonder people are overwhelmed, you know? And for those people, like I say, it's normal. Like, it's okay to feel that way, right? It's completely normal.
Right. It's almost like if you're not overwhelmed, something's wrong, right?
Yes. Yes. And the choice is, how do you want to choose to address that, right? Do you want to stay in that space of being stuck and anxious and overwhelmed and afraid and just unable to really cope and adapt? And does that then become a therapy issue? Like, do you need to get some help for that? And if you do, then, you know, I encourage everyone to seek out, you know, help, obviously. You don't want to live your life stuck. That's no fun. And it's definitely not very comfortable.
Yeah.
So, you know, if it's not a therapy issue, then, you know, how can you seek out other people in your life or, you know, other resources in your life to help you get unstuck and move forward? You know, and coaching is a great resource for that. You can also do that by reaching out and talking with people, right? Talking with friends, making sure that you have those social connections right now, even though you're physically distanced. So there's ways to address, you know, the overwhelm and the anxiety and the loneliness. But I think if you're in that space where you're stuck, there needs to be a shift that happens. And so is it a thinking shift that needs to happen? Is it a behavior shift that needs to happen? You know, is it an action that needs to be taken? Like, what is it that will help you move, right? So that you can be the best version of yourself possible.
I love it. Love it. So how can people get in touch with you?
So people can get in touch with me at my website. It's drjennifernash.com. And I have a whole bunch of resources out there for people to take a look at. I have some articles that I've recently published. I have some podcasts. I'm sure there'll be a link to this on there at some point. There's information about my book. You can sign up for a newsletter. There's resources on, you know, how to get the most value out of coaching. Just lots of different things. So I encourage everyone to take a look if it's something that they're interested in.
And your book is called Leading with Heart, right?
It is. My book is called Leading with Heart, The Human Element of Business, and it will be out in 2021. Yes. Go get the book. Thank you.
Sign up
Yeah.
at the website and get on the launch team. And I'm so excited for your book. That's great.
Thank you. I'm so
And what
excited.
about your podcast? When does the podcast come out?
So my podcast, I am aiming for April.
Okay.
So hopefully I'll have some episodes recorded by then, and I'm really excited. That's a brand new like learning avenue for me too, because I've never done that. So right now I'm sort of putting the pieces in place to learn how to do that and get things rolling.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, podcasting is really fun. It's so I'm excited for your podcast.
Thank you.
You know, so it's if nothing else, it's really a really great tool to have conversations and, you know, learn while you're also, you know, creating content. So
Yeah. I'm very excited to be able to have that opportunity, you know, just to interact with people and get their thoughts on like, what does it mean to be a human leader, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what does it mean to lead with heart? And how does the human element of business show up for you, you know, in your workspace? And does that transfer to some of those capabilities and qualities transfer into your personal life? Like, so I'm so excited to have those conversations and, you know, share that with the world. I think I can't wait. I'm so excited.
Sounds great. Well, keep in touch, and when your book comes out, we'll have to have a part 2.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love that. This was so fun. Thank you so much, Maria. I really appreciate it. And I can't believe it's gone that quickly. Wow.
Yeah, well, it's always, you know, it's fun to do it like a conversation, because then it goes quickly. It's, you know, it's like it's just like, you know, 2 people sitting down for coffee. So
Yeah.
So for those of you watching, or for those of you watching later, post your questions, and Jennifer will be on LinkedIn and Facebook, and you know, post them on YouTube if you have questions as well. And we'll see you on the other side.
All right. Thank you so much.